So hello, my friends, and thanks for being here today. I want to talk to you a little bit about kind of the big picture about what's going on. You know, it's we're surrounded by all of these pundits and media types and other kinds of stuff who are um, amazingly kind of critical of any number of things in general, but Donald Trump and his policies in particular. It dominates the airwaves, if you will. If you're plugged into this kind of space, what you know is that for weeks now, all you can think about, all you can hear is about how that Donald Trump's tariff policies are going to destroy the world. And have already tried to do it, and they're going to do it again. The Economist just had a headline that said, will Trump's policies destroy the dollar? And then you have The Guardian saying, the new world order of the past 35 years is being demolished before our eyes. All kinds of things. I mean, I have some good friends who run a salon, if you will, here in the Washington D.C. area, and they had a program the other night where they talked about impeachable of offenses and how that Donald Trump was doing all these impeachable offenses, and that it was really something we ought to spend our time on. And I'm impressed with all of this being a classic example of kind of the effort to get your attention and keep your attention on things that are not important. So, first of all, there is this strange assumption by a lot of pundits, and it's hard to tell whether it is witting or unwitting, whether these people know what they're doing or they don't know what they're doing, because there are so-called the alternative press is all the time talking about how that the mainline media is really stupid, and why can't they see this, and it's obvious, and so on, and all of these kind of assumptions that there is some level of independence by the mainline media, and that if they weren't so stupid, that they would be obvious to them that the world is not operating in the way that they're reporting it. I asked the question, do they know what they're talking about or not? Do they really believe what they're saying, or is this, do they realize that all of the media is controlled by the intelligence community? And it has been for years. And this is not speculation. This is, directors of CIA have said this. And certainly people who've come out of the whistleblowers out of the system have said this. Something like 50% maybe of the whole budget of the CIA is only to influence and buy media executives all around the world. The USAID was the principal kind of outlet for all of this, and so to suggest that the New York Times ought to be objective, and that because they're not objective, that somehow they're stupid or something, is to not realize that, of course, they're doing exactly what they're been asked to do and told to do, because that's what they've got to do. But there's more to it than this, because then when you see the general uproar about tariffs and what they're all doing, you first of all, if you're sophisticated at all in any of this kind of stuff, you need to ask yourself, why is everybody talking about tariffs and how horrible they are about Donald Trump, because it's obviously the line that's being fed to all of the editors through the intelligence community and the powers that be. And they've been orchestrated and they've been set up, and then they're just banging on this over and over and over again, very much like they did with COVID and the vaccine. The assumption being that if they say it enough times, everybody will believe it, and that because nobody kind of thinks about it. So it's really interesting to start with, to look at what everybody's saying and essentially start to say, well, what's kind of the opposite of that? Or what are they trying to cover up? Or what's going on that's really more important? Like I say, I had these friends of mine, I mean, smart guys, big time Washington lawyers and other kind of things, who are seriously looking at all the history and all of the case law and the other kind of things that are saying that, what Donald Trump is doing is impeachable, but other people have been doing it. Other presidents have done similar kind of things, but and it's like you're supposed to think this is important, and this is really fundamental and central to what's going on. The problem with all of this is that there is something far, far bigger that is happening that nobody's talking about. They're alluding to it a little bit, but only in kind of masked kind of ways. And that is that this country is on the verge of failure. Starting with the financial system and ultimately then the political system. That it is looming in ways that it has never been before in the history of the country. It is sitting there within 2 years. I've been talking lately about 2 years before the technocracy takes over, but now there's multiple kind of voices that are coming up from different, some looking at it from a financial system, others and from other directions, all coming up with the same kind of notion that says there's about 2 years before this whole thing just craters and it goes under. Dave Martin was alluding to that when he was here doing his transition talk this last weekend. And so so there is this, if you will, existential overhang that is just of gigantic implications for all of us that are essentially being ignored and diffused by all of this little stuff about who's doing what and who's on first and why aren't they doing this and why aren't they putting this guy in jail and who's this and all of that little stuff. And the reality kind of leaks out a little bit in this headline from The Economist that says, is Trump's policy is going to be the end of the dollar? Because what they are admitting is that that's a distinct possibility that the dollar will end, and the implications of that they don't mention in particular, but they're just they would be disastrous for the United States. But what they're trying to do is blame it on Trump here in advance and try to make political hay out of the whole thing. And so they depreciated the importance of all of this. And this is a serious kind of thing, because what it is diversionary, and it's hard at some level to believe that it's not done with malice aforethought, that they know what's coming and they know what's doing this, and they're trying to keep us from kind of mobilizing, coming together, realizing what's coming and what's happening, and that because if we did know what was going on, then we might do something about it, and that would really be bothersome to them, and certainly to the whole system. The proximity of this existential event is getting closer and closer and closer. And people who in the past have said, like David Martin, who have suggested that, 2027 to 2028 was when the whole financial system was going to hit the wall. And Medicare and Medicaid and all Social Security and pensions and everything were all going to go into the toilet, and the whole thing is going to end. And that's clearly in the minds of a lot of these folks who are running the country, and what they are trying to do is either circumvent or put off or do something else to kind of lengthen the soft kind of landing kind of thing that they talk about. But the fact of the matter is that this is it's essentially impossible to have a soft landing in this, and one could legitimately make the case that the extraordinary kind of effect of these tariff policies and the magnitude of their impact and the other things that Trump is trying to do, eliminate the income tax, some of these things are just big ideas, are all pointed toward, in some way or another, ameliorating the potential effects of what otherwise would be this collapse that is impending, that is just rushing at us from the horizon. That in fact that there is no better way than tariffs. I mean, there's a lot of people coming to that conclusion. They're not Democrats because they're all screaming and hollering, but they're, the Martin Armstrongs and others say, what else are you going to do? I mean, how you got to lay this off on, if you can lay take the burden off of the American people, that this whole process, if it went through its kind of natural cycle and you came out of the back end, then what you would have is all of the income that to run the government would come from the tariffs, and there would be no taxes at all on the populace. And if that is what you see as the possible bright side of this whole thing, then you could certainly justify and understand why you would need to shake the system in order to get from here. That is to say that Trump's probably doing the right thing. Nobody's got a better idea about how to do it. The situation is existential. This is really big, and something's got to be done. And if you don't do something about it, then everything's going down the toilet. And so what you've got is a whole kind of host of these blabbering mouths that are all trying essentially to kill the process of trying to remedy the biggest problem that the country has had in its lifetime. I mean, this is existential. This is about whether the United States exists or not. And you wonder again whether they know what they're talking about, whether they know what they're doing, because it is so counterproductive. They offer them positive suggestions at all, other than going back and doing the same thing that they've done before. And the point I guess I'd like to make is that what you need to do when you listen to all of these things and you look at the news and you're exposed to these kinds of ideas and these pundits, is you need to keep in mind the big picture that says that there is not much time left for this country, and what you have to do is so huge. And I mean, when you roll in this business about Doge and finding 14 computers that are just generating money out of thin air and diluting the value of the dollar, nobody knows it yet, but what it looks like from Cliff High's information is that somewhere in about June and July, it's going to surface enough that it will double what he calls the emotional. What does he call it? The emotional value of what things are now. There are huge things at stake here, immense things, bigger than any time in the history of this country. And somehow you have to keep that in mind when you look at the policies and what the government's trying to do. And I'm not defending everything, certainly. And I'm certainly concerned about what might happen after they clean a house and whether they then install technocracy and so on. But I'll tell you what, nothing is benefited by sniping at the major attempts to try to straighten things out and clean things up and do it in a hurry, because that, in fact, is what absolutely needs to be done in order for us to have any effort or any chance of continuing in any way that is familiar to us. Now, parenthetically, Martin Armstrong his computer says that it doesn't make any difference. They can do all this stuff that they want, but it's all going to come down, and there's going to get new countries in North America, starting in a year and a half or two or something like that. And between now and then, it's going to be very, very disruptive. So maybe it doesn't do any good in the end, but that's not an excuse for not trying and trying to make something happen. And so that's what I would just like to say here, is that it is you got to keep the big picture in mind, and you have to realize the magnitude of the problem here and what we're trying to do, because this is nothing small will work, and what we've done in the past certainly wasn't working. So thank you.